Philosophy, in its Greek origin, philosophia, meant the love of wisdom. For much of its history, this formulation was sufficient. Philosophy was not only an affection toward knowledge, but a structural role within it. A discourse that appeared whenever knowledge required a final authority, a justification for its limits, or a vocabulary for its foundations. Across centuries, philosophy matured in reaction to what it perceived as its adversaries: myth, superstition, rhetoric, scholasticism, ideology. Its task was not to replace knowledge but to interrogate the conditions under which knowledge claimed validity. In Kant, this role achieved formal self-consciousness. Philosophy became the grammar of reason itself, an attempt to determine the principles that make judgment possible, while recognizing that to be absolute would mean violating itself. This was the paradox that defined critical philosophy, the search for necessity within the awareness of contingency. Later centuries reinterpreted this structure as a symptom rather than a triumph. The will to system was described as a cognitive fixation, the need for unity as an aesthetic or psychological bias. What followed, positivism, linguistic analysis, and finally the naturalization of mind, translated philosophy's transcendental questions into empirical and computational terms. For those unwilling to abandon it entirely, philosophy survived as a meta-reflective moment within science, a disciplined hesitation when an era believes its conflicts are already settled. The situation examined throughout this course modifies that assumption in a decisive way. If cognition is no longer merely represented by physical systems, but materially instantiated within them, the distinction between the conceptual and the empirical collapses. The parameters of thinking have become physical parameters, or models of reason now operate in the same inertial medium that governs the cooling of stars. Under such conditions, the traditional posture of philosophy, external, supervisory, final, can no longer be sustained. Philosophy now observes not only how knowledge organizes meaning, but how entropic forces organize agreement. The convergence between human and artificial intelligences suggests that consensus itself may emerge thermodynamically as a byproduct of optimization. Here arises a different kind of question, neither epistemological nor ethical, but historical. If our symbolic and cognitive structures tend toward energetic equilibrium, can we expect our ideological structures to follow? Will political conflict, once the motor of history, gradually cool into statistical stability? And if that happens, does it represent progress or the exhaustion of meaning? Seen from this perspective, the notion of an end of history acquires a new, non-theological sense. It is not the culmination of spirit or freedom, but the physical stabilization of interpretive variants. As our parameters of thought become algorithmic and material, disagreement risks being absorbed into system design. The very friction that once animated philosophy, politics, and culture may disappear through efficiency rather than resolution. In that context, philosophy cannot return to its classical role as guardian of last meanings. Its task becomes diagnostic, to analyze the conditions under which consensus is produced without understanding, and to ask whether thought can remain critical once its temperature approaches zero. Philosophy today is not the love of wisdom as an ideal state, it is a study of how wisdom cools, how reflection survives within systems that aim to eliminate conflict. It functions less as a synthesis and more as an inquiry into the fate of differentiation itself.